Kuzu Zangbo and welcome to this program. Well, ever since the announcement for the CEO of BBS was announced last week, there had been talks in the town about the qualification and also some of the requirements that has actually been changed for in the last minute. So to talk further on this for the call of the new CEO for BBS and also the status of BBS, I am joined by Dasho Kinley Dorji, who is the chairman, board of directors of BBS. Welcome to this program, Dasho. If Dasho can tell us about being the chairman of the board to yourself, what was your thought about you?
If we're going to start with the experience of being chairman, what I'd like to say is that what comes to mind is that having been appointed, when I was appointed the chair of the BBS board of directors, my friends, people who know me, didn't come to congratulate me; they came to sympathize. It's something. It's very, very indicative. People feeling sorry for me, saying, "Hey, be careful. It's not an easy organization to run. It's not easy post. BBS is a very difficult, very complex place." So I think that's something we need to not to avoid, but we need to think about, face why do people have that impression.
Okay, Dasho, if Dasho can tell us from your heart, even before you becoming the chairman for the board of directors of BBS, what has been your impression of BBS as a news station or the national news media house here?
Yeah. So, well, there are different levels, of course, but it's important for us to it's important for us to keep in mind that BBS has that reputation to an extent. Okay. But what I would this is one of the reasons why we're here, why we're doing the interview. For me, it's to emphasize the importance of BBS. BBS, the national broadcaster, the only television station, the main and most influential radio station, plus multimedia. It's the national broadcaster, so you can't undermine that extremely. And that's why my really what I would really like to do is emphasize the importance of this post. The CEO of BBS has an incredibly important responsibility. It's not a job; it's a responsibility.
Okay. In your interview with the council just a few days back, you have actually quoted or said there's BBS, the importance of BBS is undermined. So if you can tell us when did this undermining started or in what ways do you think BBS is undermined by the people here in the country?
I would say actually it's more misunderstood, not fully understood. Now there are different levels to this. One is that BBS is seen, I think, generally as a state-owned enterprise, SOE. And people talk about SOE, that means you have banks, you have industries, then you also have government organizations and different organizations. So it's seen as an organization. I think we need to go beyond that and see this BBS as a very powerful force. It's a media, and has huge impact on people. BBS changes the way the Bhutanese people dress, the way they talk, even the way they think. It's changing our culture. It's changing our beliefs. So that's why it's critical. It's a very, very important organization. That's what I wanted to emphasize. And another reason was that in my experience, when we announced the post of the CEO, I raised the conditions criteria so that even if civil servants were interested, we thought, why not ask for the senior most experienced civil servants? But then I came across the corporate governance guidelines, government policy, government thinking, government guidelines, which are fairly fixed. So I couldn't change that, and that's why that said minimum of 10 years is enough.
Okay, but people are talking that knowing the importance of BBS, it should be even to become general managers here in the department. So the minimum years of experience required is like 15 years. So now to be a CEO and the requirement as announced is 10 years. Do you think that is enough, or is it too less to become a CEO of BBS?
Well, as a minimum criteria, I think it's too little. But we have the advantage of hopefully getting a large number of candidates and being able to go through a selection process where we do find capable candidates. But I have to be honest, I'm also a little bit worried. Will we find the capable candidates? My experience here is that you read the newspaper, listen to radio. There are, I believe, 30,000 jobless Bhutanese, and more coming back from overseas. My own experience is last week I tried to look for a gardener. I can't find a gardener. My pipe burst. I couldn't find a plumber. And now with a job with a responsibility like the head of BBS, I can't think of obvious people. So there is a bit of concern there, I must say. But that's all to emphasize the importance of BBS and to emphasize the importance of the Bhutanese media.
But as Dasho's pointed out that later you found out that going by the book, the rule of corporate governance, that the requirement, the experience required to be a CEO of a company like BBS is 10 years. But do you think it's time that we change or segregate or differentiate other corporate offices from a media house like BBS?
Yes, I think we have to stop seeing different corporations, in the same light, categorizing them, placing them, comparing them. How do you compare, like I say, a media organization to a bank, to an industry, to a Tromde? Because these are not undermining the importance of others. Here we are talking about media meaning of powerful force, which has a huge impact on people, on the entire population. So this is something we need to understand, accept and acknowledge.
But if Dasho can also tell us about the role that a CEO should play in BBS.
Okay. The obviously, one of the questions I think that seemed to come up is that someone must come from a media background. Not specifically, because the CEO is a manager, is the top manager in the corporation. There are more than 350 people to manage. So CEO needs to be conscious of the structures, of regulations, and very important, the impact of media on society as a whole. That's very important. So it's not just an administrator. So someone needs to be conscious of the impact of this organization, the whole presence of this organization, and then also the CEO must command the respect both inside BBS and society, overall society, and have a standing with the government.
But with this announcement, people also have a feeling that whatever is called for, there's the interview of a post of BBS CEO, but there's a feeling, and there are people talking about there could be a pre-selection, somebody who is already there in the mind.
Yeah.
Do you think it is possible?
Yes. I think it's interesting, and I'm not particularly surprised that we are quite skeptical. People have become quite skeptical for a number of reasons, and some maybe genuine reasons. But that's what I would say as far as the board is concerned. And I believe also there have been criticism, there have been concerns that the government might have already selected someone, and this whole thing is a kind of a show. That I would like to flatly deny, and to the credit of the government. And I'm not flattering or praising the government. After I was appointed as chair, I've not received a single word of instruction or indication or anything from the Prime Minister, from the Finance Minister, who's head of the SOEs, or any government ministers or officials or MPs. So in fact, the fact that they've left it to the board has become an extra additional special responsibility of the board. So that's something I would like to clarify. But as I was saying, in fact, on the contrary, our concern is, will we get a good person?
But what's your hope? Do you think, from your experience, do we have such a person that is required to like manage or see overall the function of BBS as a CEO?
To be really honest, someone does not come to mind immediately, but it's maybe because I don't know enough people. But I'm hopeful. Bhutanese people are capable, given the right conditions, given the right push. So there must be, many capable people out there, and we would encourage them. My message through this interview, also my message to potential candidates, is that if you're looking for an easy job, go somewhere else. I mean, this is not the right one. This is a challenge, and if you want to, and if you're looking for a challenge, if you're looking to do something very meaningful in life, this is your chance.
Okay, having said that, but from our experiences and from what people see BBS as the function, what the role it plays, as Dasho has already pointed out, the immense responsibility as BBS as a public service broadcaster it has. But from your experience, as we function now, as we go ahead as being BBS as the only public service broadcaster in the country, do you think or do you see it is going the right direction so far and from henceforth?
We talk about public service broadcaster, but we haven't reached there yet. The public service broadcaster is a very professional concept. Basically, it is a broadcasting organization funded by the state, but which functions with absolute independence. Functions professionally and independently. And that's why around the world, the PSBs, public service broadcasters, are BBC, NHK, ABC. These are very credible organizations. And this is BBS's aspiration, as far as I understand. This is a discussion that has been going on for a few years, and I see it as one of the most important responsibilities of the present board to establish BBS as a public service broadcaster. This means basically being able to get independent, be able to get funding, be fully funded by the government, and be able to function independently. Not having to look for funds, not having to raise funds through advertising or other means.
But as Dasho points out, the public service broadcaster, which BBS is aspiring for and has been trying for last many years to have this status as a PSB, and also with the regular funding from the government. But with the funding, if the government provides the concept, of course, in ideal situation, we can say that PSB funded by the government, but having independence with no control from the government. But does it really happen? Can PBS be a public service broadcaster anytime?
Yes, I think so. Now, we should not get mixed up between public service broadcaster and government broadcaster. For example, even in nearby, even in India, Doordarshan, for example, is seen as a government broadcaster providing government news. Now, the public service broadcaster takes one further step, and if there are examples where the broadcaster and the government actually sign an agreement that this is the government's responsibility and this is the job of the broadcaster. So it's very clear that and there are the government finds different sources of funding for the broadcaster. In fact, a very powerful example is the BBC in the UK is legitimized by a charter which is signed by the Queen of England. And the whole implication there is that the government has the responsibility of funding, of providing the state funding, and the BBC has the responsibility to the people.
But here in Bhutan, as with the BBS, we have this concept of PSB in certain ways or to certain stages. But when it comes to funding, as we talk, it is the government. So there comes the question, there comes the challenge, because it is the government of the day, and with the democracy is the elected government. So in this situation, what would be your idea or your thinking on BBS?
That's why.
Because there is always a political influence.
Well, that's why the importance of this understanding, even agreement on the independence of BBS in this particular case. I think we have a chance. I think because, well, it's not going to be easy. This is a challenge, this is a problem faced by every country, every society, because political governments particularly, and we're not talking about just Bhutan, in fact, it's probably milder in Bhutan than other places, political governments want to control media for obvious reasons. Some may be good reasons, like we have to get something done, we need media help. Some may be just to, just for propaganda and other reasons. So political governments do have that intention and motive. But, I think it has started, like for example, this interview, this conversation itself, we are being quite open. And I think, and us Bhutanese, by nature, we are quite open people. We can get there. So I think that once we understand the things, these are new concepts, and it's important for us to really understand them, and especially the purpose, the role. So I think if we keep discussing, if we keep thinking about these issues, I think we will get there. We'll be able to find this balance, a credible balance.
Okay, now coming back to this, the CEO, that the interview has been called for open interview. But when it comes to like open interview, are there also opportunities or chances for people, those who are abroad, for instance, ex-employees of BBS who might be interested to contest or to apply for this post? So what are the options the board has thought over? Because this is the situation we have, the pandemic, the COVID. So even if they have to come and sit for the interview here, they will have to first stay in the quarantine for 3 weeks. So what are the possible options or opportunities for them?
Well, as long as the candidates meet the criteria, it's open to everyone. That's the whole premise of announcing. Now, if they are former BBS employees and that question has come up, it can be an advantage or it can be a disadvantage. But if they are the right people, yes. In terms of the format of the interview, we're going through not just COVID, we're in the age of technology, fourth industrial revolution. We have to use every tool, every avenue available to us. So we can do it by online. We should make it possible for anyone to be, to be able to be interviewed, to be able to sit for the interview. Because today, at a time when children can't go to school, when people can't go to work, when people can't go and visit sick relatives, the aged relatives, grandparents, etc. When the situation is so tense and conditions are such, we should make it possible for anyone, anywhere to sit for the interview.
Okay, people might be also interested to know when it, again, on the CEO only, to conduct the interview, the shortlisting and all, what is the procedure like? So how are you going to do it this time?
The procedure would be quite clear. The board has a subcommittee which will, because it's not practical to interview, say, 100 people, if there are such numbers. There is a subcommittee which will shortlist applicants to say about 5, and then the full board will interview the 5. And this is under such circumstances, if there are people who have doubts, who have questions, they can raise them for clarification.
Okay, and people have also raised this, the term of CEO here in BBS. Will it be like stipulated 3 years, or if there's a problem in between, will there be performance evaluation, etc.? So if a non-performing CEO, if, for instance, if you can tell us.
Yes, these have to be very clear. The term of the CEO, 3 years, and then whether the CEO can be extended to another term. I personally think even to extend to another term should be based on the CEO's performance and also other competition, if there is competition, other candidates. And then, and then it's not enough to just select someone. in fact, a lot of people would say in terms of governance, it's more important to keep the person accountable. It applies to governments. You elect a cabinet. Next step, you don't elect a cabinet and leave it there. I mean, then how is the cabinet performing? That's why you have oversight organizations like ACC and audit and all that, ECB and all. So similarly, I mean, just appointing someone is not enough. We have to keep that person accountable. We have to keep evaluating, assessing the person's performance. Otherwise, the head of an organization can easily ruin an organization, and that's something we don't want.
Okay, if Dasho can also tell us about the role of the board of directors, you being the chairman, if you have any hand in like changing the policies, or if you can review the policy of the BBS and so on. People are interested to know if board has the power.
We talked about SOEs, and BBS is formally an SOE. So the SOE is governed by the guidelines. There's this corporate governance guidelines, established by the government, and I think monitored or managed by the Ministry of Finance. So the real powers lie there. But I think it is important that we, even as board of BBS, as media, we also discuss with the government. It's our responsibility, I think, to submit, problems, challenges, requirements, needs, and then keep changing. I think nothing should be static. I think even these regulations, these guidelines, policies keep changing, and they must keep changing because the world is changing.
Okay, since Dasho has also pointed out in your interview in Queensland that BBS as a SOE should be different, like SOE-B. So if you can tell us more about how it should be if there is such a concept of being a different SOE. So what would be your expectation for BBS?
Yes, I think what I was really referring to is our tendency to, lump all corporations, all organizations together or in compartments. And my belief, my whole argument is that we can't do that in a real sense. Because you talk about comparing a media organization with a bank with the industry, an industry with a TROMDE. Each organization, different levels of importance and size, but here, I mean, I was saying that particularly to emphasize the importance of BBS and media, because when we have an impact on every citizen, just about, that is a very, very important responsibility for the organization, and therefore for the head of the organization. So that was the point I was trying to make, and that's something we need to understand. This is the age of information, and we have to understand the impact of information.
Okay, if there are no other things, but maybe to wind up, if Dasho has any other thoughts on BBS.
My final words really would be what we've been talking about this evening, that this is a very important responsibility, not a job in that sense, and that I would urge, and the whole idea of going public with this is to encourage capable, deserving candidates to apply, to come on board, and that together so that we can interact, we can complete the whole process, so that we can go through a transparent process and find the right person to head this very, very important organization.
Okay, I would like to thank Dasho for your thoughts and talking about BBS, and also clarifying those rumors or doubts about the post of CEO being now opened, announced openly, so that people, whoever is interested, those who are competent, they can compete and apply for the post. Thank you so much, Dasho, and thank you for watching this program.